All right, hey everyone. Is this working? I think so. Yeah, okay, cool. I'm super excited to be here talking with all of you today. Let's get started. So let's see if this works. Cool. Quick introduction. My name is Cindy, and I am a senior product designer at Intercom. Originally, I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area, but about a year and a half ago, I moved to Dublin, Ireland, where I currently work on Intercom's design team, and I lead the design on Intercom's Respond product. We'll talk about that a little bit in more detail later. Let's see. There. So quick show of hands before I think Hugo was talking about how many of you have used Intercom. How many of you have at least heard of Intercom? Okay, cool. That's good. So in case you're not already familiar, Intercom is on a mission to make internet business personal. There's weird noise coming. That's cool too. Oh, okay, no worries. It's personal in that way. We're on a mission to make internet business personal, so that communication between you and your customers can be really simple, personal, and fun. And we do this from our customer side through our product, the Messenger. And our Respond product, on the other hand, helps to keep all of those customers and conversations really manageable, all at scale. So today, I want to take you kind of behind the scenes of how we approach product at Intercom and frame it around a feature that we built in Respond called conversation ratings. So the problem that we are trying to solve is that support teams need a clear and simple and consistent way to measure how well their team is doing so that they know how to improve the team and that they can prove their value to the business. And the solution that we ended up building was an automatic way to have the end user rate a conversation after it was over with an emoji and an optional comment. So you can kind of see the interaction going on there. So this happens across all the channels that we support, and the support team gets to see all of these insights aggregated over time. And since we released this a few months ago, the feature has gone over extremely well. We have positive adoption and continuous growth, and really our engagement rates are really high. They've kind of exceeded or met all the expectations that we set out. But I think most of all, it's really helped people like our own customer support team. This is an example of a message that our support team teammate Megan got. And it's really been really helpful to be able to see all of the kind of meaningful feedback that's come in to help customers understand how well they're doing. Now, this project came out of a lot of feature requests from customers, some of which you can see here. And as product people, I think we all know at this stage that we're supposed to kind of shoulder these requests in a way and really try to look for the problem as well, not just kind of take these feature requests as the source of truth. And this all sounds good in theory, I think, but I kind of want to talk to you about what does this actually look like in real life and what happens when you get an entire support team to really do this together. So at Intercom, we have 5 ways of working that really enable us to do this. And these principles are, sorry, this is a mess, I might just stop using it. These principles are to design from first principles, think big, start small, ship to learn, build the team on open and over communication, and to design for emotions to win hearts and minds. And for each of these, I'll kind of walk through them in a little bit more detail and kind of talk to you about how they worked for our conversation ratings project. Okay, so the first one, design from first principles. It can feel really easy to just jump straight into a problem and a solution once you have that feature request from a customer, because they often already have something in mind, like a solution that they want. Or maybe there is something existing that's already out there. It's definitely good to like acknowledge what's out there, I would say, but I would caution against just going out and mindlessly copying the yesterday solutions of other companies, because they probably have stuff that they want to change. It's probably not going to be the best solution out there. So instead, what's better to do is to really kind of take a step back and try to understand the problem and really what it's trying to get at. So as an example for this project, I had kind of a sense of the initial idea that, maybe we wanted to go in one direction, since there's lots of other examples of rating requests out there. But it turned out from our research and our problem statement that really a full solution to being able to measure how well a support team is doing really involves lots of different directions, stuff that I hadn't really even considered beforehand. Such as like getting feedback internally from your support team, or like automatically analyzing conversations for tone and sentiment, things like that. And so by really diving deep into the problem space through competitive analysis and like desk research, interviews with customers, we were able to kind of create the headspace for ourselves to start to do some systems design for this problem. And what this really means is that like a system is really about understanding all of the different elements that go into your possible solution. And it's trying to figure out what are all those elements and what are the relationships between them and how can they form a system together to achieve a purpose or to solve a problem. So this is an example of like a system maybe that we came up with for this one of the directions that we were considering. And we would take these and kind of put up pros and cons for all of them and basically put them up in a room, walk through them together as a group and discuss them. And so in this process, we were able to be really deliberate about how we were going to approach the problems. So the second point, think big, start small. And okay, so for this project, we thought really big. We had lots of different explorations, some of which you can see here. I think the sketch file that I had to be basically split into 6 different ones or something, and every time I opened them, it would still completely crash my computer. So basically, we thought really big. It's a good idea, I think, to go broad when you're solving a problem, and to kind of think about the complete picture of where you're going, so that you know the full landscape that's going to come up ahead, and you might know any surprises that will come up. But at the same time, it's a good idea to break down that into small concrete steps so that you have a plan for how to get there. So I'm going to talk to you about an example of what happens when you don't do that well. In our early user research, we found that customer teams really like the idea of letting the end user choose a rating for a reason for a bad rating. So like it took too long, or it was impersonal, or the person was unfriendly, something like that. Because internally, these reasons, they could be aggregated into like areas of improvement for the team that you could basically aggregate on the team level. You could get that for an individual person. So support managers really found this incredibly valuable. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so valuable. We have to provide this like immediately for our users. But what I hadn't really considered was like this feature could actually be an iceberg in disguise. So, it seems like a simple concept, but there's many more knock-on effects of having something like reasons. Like you have to think about translations, or think about what happens in reporting if like the reasons are changing. You have to think about customization. So there's many other things to consider. And so what we ended up doing was we de-scoped this from our initial first solution, but it's an idea in our back pocket. And because we kind of thought big about it, now we know like a path that we could take to get there. So it really served as a reminder for me to start small at the same time, as well as thinking big, and to have an idea about what that simplest solution is, so that you can really straddle the balance between being really pragmatic and visionary at the same time. The third point is ship to learn. So raise your hand if you've ever been in a room with other people and you've struggled to reach consensus on a decision. Should be lots of hands. More hands. Okay. So yeah, what's probably happening here is that the conversation is being built on like what ifs, like hypotheticals, right? So, you can always keep arguing until like the cows come home. I don't know if that saying works here. You can keep arguing for a long time. But essentially, sometimes you just need to test things out and make a agreed decision that's based on shared data. So a few examples of this. For conversation ratings, we were having a really hard time initially trying to determine when the end of a conversation was, because we wanted to use that as a point to ask the end user, how did that conversation go, which seems really logical. And at the time, conversations in Intercom could be in one of two internal states. So these would be states that like a support teammate would use to keep track of what's happening with the conversation. So it could be open or closed. And in other support tools that are more like ticketing based, closed basically means that the problem has been solved because like the ticket is closed and there's nothing else that you can do. But in Intercom, like conversations can just continue to pick up, like in a messenger that you're chatting with with a friend. Basically, anytime someone replies, like that conversation gets picked up again. And so people were kind of just using closed to, get things out of their open list. So people were like closing conversations after every single reply, which is not good for determining the end of a conversation. So what we really wanted was to try to like change this behavior a little bit, so that we could tell when the conversation was over. And what we did was we thought about a bunch of different solutions, and we ended up doing a quick and dirty engineering prototype, testing this out with our own customer support team. And we got a lot of really good feedback, as you can kind of see here, just people like leaving their comments and all that stuff. And what we ended up doing was we realized that we actually had to build another conversation state in between, so that people had more control over like their entire workflow and how to manage their conversations. So this is an example of a thing that we learned that we could only really learn through like real data and real usage, and not just like arguing stuff in a room or looking at like a design on a screen. So related to that, the other thing we do at Intercom is we do betas. So we test a lot of things before we fully release it, and we make a lot of changes along the way. So for this project, we were really good about putting together a beta plan, as you can kind of see here, with exactly what we wanted to learn, how we were going to learn it, what we were like actually building, and then like kind of who we were reaching out to, things like that. And a cool outcome of this is how we iterated on the question that we used to ask end users to rate the conversation. Initially, it read like this: help Intercom, or help like company name, help the family, understand how they're doing, rate your conversation. But basically what we found was that customers were getting more negative feedback based on the company instead of the actual quality of support that that teammate gave you. And so we decided to replace this with the name of the person who actually helped you, which makes sense, right? And we saw that it was a tiny tweak, but for our own support team, the positive ratings actually went up by 6%, which is really big if you think about it. It's just like one word. And so we ended up releasing this, feeling comfortable releasing this to everyone. So another thing, it's a really good example of being able to be clear about what you want to learn, make those changes, and then actually, make it happen for everyone. Okay, so up until now, I've kind of talked about 3 ways of working that, design from first principles, think big, start small, and ship to learn. That kind of make up a lot of how we think about product and how we build at Intercom. But I want to talk about now the last kind of 10% of building product. So like, what are the other additional like magic ingredients that you add on? What allows us to kind of build stuff that people don't really ask for, but they end up loving anyway? So there's 2 ways of getting at that. So the first is to basically build the team on open and over communication. So this sounds like really simple, pretty obvious. I'm sure you guys all do this already, but I just want to stress again how important it is. Like we all know that building trust and motivation on projects and on teams can be really difficult, especially when something's going on for a long time. like it's really hard to make everyone like stay on the same page, right? So oftentimes I think product development is sometimes kind of feels assembly line style, where like one person passes on the decision to another person, and then like that person on the end has no idea like why they're even working on something, like they don't understand the rationale. I think in reality, like everyone kind of wants to aim for something more like this, where a team is really actively working together in sync. So one way we do this at Intercom is we sit together in our product teams. So I sit with all of the Respond engineers. I sit right next to my PM, and this makes communication in person really seamless. But we also use Slack to communicate. And what we ended up doing for this project was we created a channel specific for this project, which is different from just like a regular team channel that you use to talk about like anything on. And so what this enabled us to do was have like a shared space and repository for like any decisions that came up, share notes, engineering updates. We shared customer feedback and like metrics. And anyone involved in the project, like no matter how involved they were, was able to join and see this. So like we have a marketing team in San Francisco. They were able to come in and see like, why did we make a decision here? So it really helped everyone stay in sync together. And I think as a result, everyone had a really strong influence over the project. So for example, like one idea that came up originally for rating a conversation, we were only considering showing an optional comment on a negative rating. So like if something went wrong, like please tell us why. But we were not thinking about doing this for a positive rating because we didn't want to like overburden the user and ask like, why are you happy? Like it's a bit of a different signal. But it was Patty, who was one of our engineers, who first suggested that like positive ratings and positive comments are actually really nice for a support team to see, right? Because otherwise you would just get a bunch of negative feedback all the time. And that's not what we want either. And so we decided to like add that in. And I think the takeaway here is really just that like when everyone is in the loop and they have a voice that they feel can be heard, then your product will ultimately become stronger from all the ideas and the discussions that come out. So yeah. And then finally, the last point I want to share is to design for emotions and have that win hearts and minds. So I think when you really know your customers and you get to a point where you know their problems and their needs so well that you can start to like design solutions and anticipate their problems and solve these for them even before they realize there's a problem. And when you can do this and you do this in a way that really like elicits an emotional connection with your user, then there's something really kind of magical right there that has the power to rally people together and get something done, even if it breaks a couple rules along the way. So when we worked on conversation ratings, we knew that this feature was maybe going to kind of feed into an already metrics-driven, kind of tough and stressful environment that support teams often face. And so we wanted to kind of take a step back and think about every opportunity we could to make using Intercom feel really positive, using this conversation ratings feature feel really good. And so we wanted to ask, like, how can we deliver, highlight positive feedback? How can we deliver positive feedback to teammates in a really immediate way and celebrate their successes? And so this was just like a fun exploration that we did. We got a bunch of designers in a room and like kicked around a couple ideas, but it wasn't like officially on the roadmap in any way. It wasn't like a real problem that we like set out to really solve. But from there, like we kind of finessed these a little bit more. I created some product principles around the experience feeling really lightweight and kind of unexpected, totally not stressful because we want this to be a celebratory thing. And eventually we kind of got to this concept that internally we call the inbox of love. So the idea is kind of like you as a customer support teammate, at any point you can kind of take a break, go to this little jar of feedback that has all of your positive comments in there and kind of take one out, read it, get a little like shot of love, feel good about yourself, and then maybe like whenever you feel like it, kind of continue back and doing work. Concretely, This means clicking on a little heart icon in the top corner, respond, seeing the feedback, and like lots of confetti, because we doesn't want more confetti, right? What was really amazing about this project was that like it was never really supposed to be built. Like nobody asked for this. It wasn't like a real thing that was officially on the roadmap, as I said. It really was just like a passion project that started from the team. And Sebastian, one of our engineers, he ended up building it over the weekend, like just for fun. So that was like just amazing to see. And I think why it resonated so strongly was this exactly, that it was the perfect blend of our understanding of the customer, our brand, and our product vision. And in that way, it really got people excited. And even though we broke a lot of rules along the way, like it still ended up being really celebrated. And of course, the best part of it is seeing feedback. Like this was something, again, we didn't beta test this really because we wanted it to be a surprise. And people like, shouting out comments on Twitter, saying like it's their favorite feature. And like, this comment is pretty cool. Like pay raise, medal, like sure. Yeah, so it's just been really great to see that kind of feedback come in. So that's pretty much it. Like, I kind of wanted to talk about the journey of taking a load of customer support requests, getting the whole team involved in building that, and like adding a little thing, a cherry on top above it that, nobody asked for that. And again, this is how we got there. So design from first principles, think big, start small, ship to learn, build the team on open communication, and finally design for emotions to really win hearts and minds. And overall, I think the key takeaway is that success will only be really achieved when everyone on the team really feels a sense of like ownership and pride in not just like crafting the final output, but really in like the customer and the problem and the journey of getting there. And when your team can experiment and iterate and learn together on this journey, ultimately you'll be able to like float the best version of your product out there to your users. So that's it. Good luck and thanks.
Girl,